We are ready for our first session. I'm just going to quickly check to make sure that our first presenter is here. So please bear with me a moment.
Good morning, Jill. This is Carrie. He is here.
Okay, great. I have found Patrick, and Patrick, I'm going to promote you to panelist so you'll be able to share your screen and everything. But first, I'm going to quickly introduce you. So, our first session today is project planning for the NDE, and that is going to be presented by Patrick Cassidy from Union College. He is the Systems and Discovery Librarian at Union College. So, Patrick, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and whenever you're ready, take it away.
Thank you very much. 1 second to share my screen. All right, hopefully you can all see that and you can all hear me as well. Um, Please let me know in the chat. Yep, perfect. All right, thank you so much. So good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Cassidy. I am the Systems and Discovery Librarian for Union College. Today, I will be going over our approach to implementing and utilizing the next discovery experience, or the new Primo, being released by Ex Libris, and how as a library, we're using this changeover as a greater opportunity to review our entire discovery experience. Thank you as well for Sunila for having me. All right, so a little bit of information about Union College. We're a small liberal arts college in Schenectady, New York, founded in 1795, which we're very proud of. Over 60 undergraduate majors and minors, currently enrollment of around 2,000 students, with a big focus on that kind of combination education of engineering and liberal arts together. I work at Schaefer Library specifically, which migrated to Ex Libris Alma Primo VE in 2019. However, I didn't start working here until a couple of, about 3 years ago. Again, we are Schaefer Library is a primary library. We have an offsite research library, special collections department, and an offsite warehouse with a physical inventory of about 500,000 items. But luckily, a pretty generously sized staff, just for context of as we're talking about this project planning. Uh, During COVID, though, a lot of our librarians eventually retired, so there's been a lot of change and loss of knowledge. So we're all kind of still getting our feet under us when it comes to me, especially about this technology era. But so what is the NDE? So I'm going to start with the basics for those of you who are maybe not on the technical side as much, or are not as tuned into the world of Ex Libris, if you don't have to be. I do want to preface this conversation as coming from the perspective of someone who is in charge of implementing the NDE as less of an outside observer. This will be focused on expressing how to convey to your staff and faculty what the NDE is, and more importantly, what it isn't. So I'll be covering kind of the major elements of the NDE, putting together a project plan for addressing the scope of the changeover, as well as the timeline we've kind of settled on for utilizing this. So the next discovery experience. When talking about the NDE, I really like to frame it as two kind of separate but slightly overlapping conversations, just to help kind of put into context what it is. Uh, the reality is that the NDE is primarily a Primo VE design change. So your front end discovery experience, more of just a physical design change and not a functional design, not a functional change. So any problems you still have with your Primo, like I do, of your ranking results, bad metadata coming from the community zone, that kind of thing, it's still really realistically going to be a problem, but it is going to look a lot nicer, at least. So it was announced originally in 2023. The switchover will be mandatory by 2028 as they sunset the old Primo VE and for this NDE. And it's still an active development as well, if you are not aware of it. So you can see the top image is our current Primo experience, and the bottom one is the NDE itself. So it's a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer, nice little design change. But again, largely design change. The second element that comes with the NDE in order to kind of have this conversation is the implementation of AI tools. So right now in your Primo environment, there's the availability for the research assistant and the Ask Anything, which I'll get into in a little bit more. We're going to be talking a bit more about that later on, but I just wanted to kind of start that conversation because that'll be a bigger, larger conversation probably with your library, with your campus about AI in general. Right. And then for background about what the tools are, the research assistants, I really frame it more as a chatbot. So you go in, you ask your question. It does require login, but it is more of a full page interactive experience that'll pull more limited resources. It doesn't seem to pull everything from the catalog, just limited items, but it'll provide those citations. And it's more of a mock conversation. You ask anything, which I think came out about maybe a year or so ago. It's always available. It's a little button next to the original search bar where you get a prompt to put in a question, and then it breaks down the initial question into more of an advanced search, as you see on the screen, and it pulls from the entire catalog. It's actually kind of an interesting perspective, but I'll talk more about AI in a little bit as well. But with the NDE coming, however, as I mentioned, I've only been here about 3 years. Well, we had switched over to Primo VE 2019, and we haven't really touched it too much. We haven't done a lot with it or examined it. So we thought this would be a good opportunity to start identifying elements of Primo we see as potential shortcomings or things we would like to change or just do more in-depth looks at. Traditionally, website design spaces, it's not great to make minor changes over time, as this can lead to confusion to the end user where things are suddenly labeled differently or located in different areas. Instead, it's typically better to make all these changes at one time so the user can experience the relearning process all at once with a more clear understanding of why the changes may have occurred. So with the NDE coming, we thought this would be a great time to kind of take a look into those. The first step about that, though, was identifying what it is we were looking to examine and take a deeper look at. So when we wanted to build out a project plan, this really came down to 2 major questions. What do we need? And then what do we want to do for the NDE changeover? Within Schaefer Library, I'm very lucky. I lead a community called PACT, the Prima Alma Coordination Team, which is a cross-departmental group within the library. So we have librarians from our research and engagement department, our acquisition staff, as well as me leading at the system side. So we can kind of get a broader perspective of what it would be, what people are looking for and how they're using it as well. So what we would do is get together, we would sit down and start building out these questions of what do we need to do and what do we want to do. So since the NDE is kind of outside of our wheelhouse and is going to be a force change, there were some things we need to do: color schemes, logo changes, images. Sleepers' default images are nice, but they're not exactly us. We want to make sure our terminology is consistent, as well as the homepage tiles that they implemented. Got to make sure this stuff links. But what do we want to do? So these things are still sticking around and are just getting updated, but we've never done a deep look into it. So we thought this would be a good opportunity, such as the links menu at the top, the search filter bar, which is a relatively new feature, but has been very nice. What information on the homepage it would be the most beneficial to our users, record sharing options, since there are so many now, search profile slots, as well as my personal thing would be renaming it. We call our Primo Primo, and for our students, that means nothing. So being able to give it a new unique name, like many of you probably already have as well, would be hugely beneficial. So we want to take an examination of that. With those topics kind of in mind, what we then started to doing is generating a living project plan based off of those issues we wanted to discuss. We started by breaking it down into goals, identifying what it is we want to accomplish, which is not just implement the NDE, but create a better user experience, provide better training for our librarian staff as well, any kind of all those kinds of things. We wanted to identify our stakeholders who will be affected by this changeover, and then what our needs are as well for when this becomes a reality. From there, based on the previous slide where we're talking about what we want to do, we had to examine how long we think that those things could be implemented and then start breaking up the project plan into parts, breaking down the steps, what restraints we might encounter, as well as a schedule and checklist to help keep us on track as well. After kind of going through all this, we finalized on a 5-part breakdown of what we think the NDE would be greatest at for, or when it should be implemented. Part 1 is our initial design, where that included the development of the project plan itself, breaking down what we wanted and mapping out those steps. Part 2 is the actual development of the NDE, kind of utilizing our sandbox environment based on our design change to make some informed decisions about what we want to build out. Part 3 is the initial testing, where we get library staff and faculty, as well as some of our student workers to begin playing around with that, providing their feedback. Part 4 would be a beta launch, where since our library homepage is not Primo, but off on a different service, we can provide 2 different portal links, one to the original browsing Primo and one to the NDE, so that people can test, but they still have that familiar experience if they want it, as well as kind of creating a form to collect information about what that would look like. And then part 5 would become the full release, where we would sunset the original Primo VE experience and switch entirely to the NDE based on the feedback we've kind of gathered. This is a pretty big gap because we want to use that time, that full year from summer 2026 to summer 2027 to implement that information, gather that results, and make those changes. But that's a lot of information we're hoping to collect. And as you know, getting information, especially from our primary users, the students, isn't always the easiest. So we had to find a way to go about changing that. And how are we supposed to gather that information? Luckily, we're discovered that we have a professor on campus who is teaching a class literally titled Users Interfaces. So we reached out to her to discuss the possibility of having our class study and compare our previous website to what potentially the NDE should look like and provide the results and idea, which is a huge boon to us. So what we did was we sat down with the professor, discussed what she was looking for to provide for her class, and then I started to document a list of what we wanted as an overview of what it was, what customization options were available, and what the key information we were looking for to glean from her students. This included the links menu, since we've never really done a full examination of it, search filter bar, Primo homepage information, record sharing options, homepage titles, search profile slots, even the thumbnails, as well as the collections discovery pages. So all these like kind of minor elements that they're features of Primo, but we've never done that kind of deep dive into how are students actually using them? What do they want them to be? Do they understand what they are and how they function? So this is currently going on right now. They're, I think, in midterms right now. So once they finish up in a couple of weeks, we're very excited to see the results and use that information to help build out what our NDE looks like. Again, though, our scale is pretty big. We're just doing everything in Primo, kit and caboodle. If you are looking for something different, scale it, just the NDE change itself. You don't have to go that extreme. But it's great to be able to work with faculty and students directly on this. So the professor mentioned that in the class work breakdown, they're going to do comparisons and task testing, both from the original Primo VE as well as the NDE, in order to kind of see what works best. She asked her students also to create user cases to experience what they potentially look like. Um, focus work on then begin focus work on a single element of each part that I kind of mentioned previously, eventually coming to user evaluations and then final reports. Um, this is going to be great. I'm very excited about this. And then especially I have to see what hoops I have to jump through to potentially release this to the broader community as well, since I've never really done that and it's student work. So, but I would love to be able to share out this information, especially with the Primo working group, which I'm a part of. Looking forward to that. So that's really our general approach to the design elements of the NDE. The second part, as mentioned, is the AI elephant in the room, where I know we're all going to hear so much more about AI and everything that comes with it. But instead of talking about those specific, it really becomes a question of should we implement it at all? And that kind of cascades into a bigger question of campus use. And if our campus is going to be allowing that right now, at Union, the water is a little murky. It's really up to each individual professor if they allow uses of AI in their classroom. So we're going to see about that. As far as how that conversation is going, though, we are taking a few different approaches at Union. First is we have a wonderful librarian who has started an AI community of practice where we have a discussion about the usage, we're sharing information and tools, and also has recently done a survey about the emotional feeling from both students and faculty to see how their responses to AI are. We also have a new president who wanted to start an AI-focused book club to reflect on previous technology and expand our current knowledge of it. Very curious to see how that is going to go as well. And then, as I'm sure you all know, there's tons of AI discussion lists everywhere. You can definitely engage kind of across the board and try and stay tapped in. I think kind of having all these conversations, my only piece of advice when talking about this is really keep an open mind. It's definitely framing the conversation as an ongoing process, but the reality is that, complete dismissal of AI will just kind of stop the conversation or to keep an open mind. Well, it's also important to address the issues with AI while recognizing that it is here and does have some practical applications for some users. And digesting that internally will become kind of a personal journey for all of us. But those were the big things. So I just want to see if anyone had any questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Patrick. We've had a pretty robust conversation going in the chat too. So I think a lot of people are really interested in this kind of stuff. And I know that I am. I've been finding this transition to be really daunting and I haven't even begun to tackle it. So really appreciated your presentation. I'm going to go into the Q&A now. We have a couple questions there and I will ask you those questions. Our first one is, since full implementation is not until next year, are you concerned that Primo VE doesn't meet the new ADA Title II standards that go into effect in April?
I think that's a great question. I definitely think there is concern about it, but it also becomes a point of where it just feels out of our hands a little bit. That falls onto Ax Libris to make those changes. And the most I could do is to just try and stay on top of those changes as much as possible. I know that's a bit of a pessimistic answer, but with everything going on regarding the ADA Title II changes, it feels like just another, thing to handle as well.
All right, thank you. Our next question is, are you doing any student testing on the new AI features, or still too early for that given campus concerns?
I think we'd love to do testing on AI features. We're still working out how that process is going to do. So we actually have some student workers who we just kind of opened up the NDE with the AI tools to see how they would react to it. they actually really enjoyed it and they found it really helpful. I think the thing that I found most interesting was the Ask Anything feature. They understood it was AI, but they didn't understand how it functioned. So again, kind of comes like, okay, this seems like a possibility of use, but how do we frame it? But at the end of the day, it'll be about kind of how the campus goes and shifts with that direction, as well as what we see out of that testing.
All right, thank you. We have another one. Can you say more about how you plan to provide access to the NDE during your beta phase? Will it be on your homepage, link, search box, and where in relation to your current Primo?
So it'll be primarily on our homepage. Our Shaver library, as mentioned, is hosted outside of Primo. So we'll likely just embed two different options, one for the original, I haven't really come up with a name for it yet, but the original Primo search option, and then this new NDE for people to try. So since there's kind of two separate links and pathways, just provide those options there, um, along with a form. That's how I envision it. We haven't gone into in depth about it. A form underneath to provide any feedback people may have. Again, project plans need to be living documents. You need to, you don't know how things are going to shift or change, but we'll have to see how that goes.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions in the Q&A. Just a reminder to any of our attendees, if you do have a question for Patrick or for any of our other presenters as they present, please drop that in the Q&A instead of the chat. So we still have some time. So we're going to give everyone a couple more minutes to ask some questions.
Yeah, and please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, looks like someone has already asked one. How is your group building sandbox refreshes into your timeline?
Uh, that typically falls under my job duties, and we have not built it. Like, that's a good consideration. Uh, Typically, before Sandbox refresh hits, I'll just download our customization templates and save it so that we can drop it in.
Okay, we're getting a couple more questions now. I see one. First, thanks for this. Can you share the pics from that AI book club you mentioned?
Ooh, what? That's a great question. Let me see if I can dig that up in my email.
In the meantime, I do see someone among the attendees list with their hand raised. If you have a question for any of us on the committee, you can just send that to us via chat. And if you have a question for Patrick, you can drop that in the Q&A. So I'm going to unraise your hand, asker.
All right, so the book itself is Co-Intelligence, Living and Working with AI by Ethan Mullock.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Next question. What are your thoughts about the NDE navigation changes?
Um, I think it's understandable. I don't really have a strong feeling about, like, too strong a feeling about it. I think as kind of a more of a power user, my experience is also like the changes they're making are a bit more of a modern sensibility. Uh, but you know, as someone who has adapted technology many times over the years, I think I just got all right. Especially since most of my searching is within Alma itself and not as much as a Primo as it should be. That's a great question, though. I probably should investigate more and put down more of my thoughts about that.
Okay. Next question. Is there a reason you are using Sandbox and not using the duplicate clone feature in the live environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our live version of the NDE, we're specifically maintaining it for the professor's class, but we're doing our own customization on the back end, just so that we don't disrupt her class at all. Um, but that's a good point to bring up.
Okay. Can you describe your internal working group for making NDE decisions, whether it's formal or not?
So right now it is our director of research and engagement, our reference librarian, as well as our acquisition librarian and myself. Um, our acquisition librarian obviously isn't going to have too much to do, but since we covered a lot of things outside of just Primo before this, but it is a it is a relatively formal meeting where we have set meetings every couple of months, which we're expanding now to every other week in order to keep up with the changes of the NDE and have those more in-depth discussions. Anyone within the library, of course, is always welcome to change and provide input. I hope that answered
Okay.
your question.
We're getting a few more, which is great. Do you have a timeline slash structure for the year of time between beta and full release?
Yes, so the timeline is going to be we're going to start the beta during the summer of 2026, and then the full release will be the summer of 2027. You can go back to that slide if you like. Well, but during that time is where we'll start making those kind of minor, more broad changes within the NDE based off of probably the results from that student class.
Okay. Have you tried to create a new search box on the library homepage to replace the Primo-based search box? If yes, anything we need to know?
I haven't yet. That is a very good question, though, and I'm sure we'll eventually get around to it. I'll keep you posted. I imagine the linking would still be to just swapping out the inevitable link to the NDE environment. So hopefully it should be that simple.
All right, great. How do you integrate the changes that come with Primo feature releases into your project plan? That's a good question.
Uh, I would say, yeah, that's a very good question. We're lucky in that we're not a part of a consortium and we're kind of a smaller thing. So a lot of the things that come out of the Primo feature release we've noticed are either features that already exist within Primo VE and are now being updated to be added to the NDE, or largely can affect consortiums like at a bigger scale. So we aren't directly impacted by it. My usual routine is to go through all the major release notes, send them out to the library so that we're fully aware of it. I'm keeping an eye on all the roadmap that they just released, but I haven't seen anything jump out as like a major concern yet. But when we get to that hurdle, I will let you know.
All right. Are there any NDE new feature releases you're looking forward to, and how do you build implementation of new features into your work slash timeline?
Yeah, a great question again, similar as just the project plan, it has to be kind of a living document specifically for those cases. So you just have to bring them up to our pact group to kind of have those discussions of when we think we can implement them. As far as feature releases, I am personally really looking forward to their continued expansion of linked open data and kind of creating those connections. Very curious to see how it'll actually shake out in the end use cases, but I've always been a big advocate for linked open data, so I'm excited to see how Ex Libris continues to expand about that.
Great. We have time for a couple more. Do you have a publicly accessible link for your beta interface that we could see?
We don't right now, unfortunately. We're kind of keeping that under wraps for now. But once we start making more publicly available, I'd be happy to share that out as well. And I regularly attend the Primo discussion groups. Ben, if you're into that, if you want to join there, I'll share out anything I gain or knowledge I obtain.
All right, great. Uh, will the May release of the NDE Alma configurations that are supposed to make customization easier impact the configurations that you've already made? Will you redo some customizations that you've already made?
Will it impact? Almost definitely. Will we redo some customizations? I think there's probably a high chance of that. I know Ex Libris is really trying to make it customization more accessible for people who don't have uh, for librarians who don't have experience with coding, especially website design, which I think is great. But as someone who does, it'll be interesting to see how that will directly impact. As long as we can kind of all the features on the customization package override anything structured in Alma, we should be okay. But you never know how these things shake out at the end of the day.
Okay, and I think we have time for one last question. And again, any questions that we don't have time for, I'm going to forward to Patrick and I'll share those answers after the conference. And that question is, do you foresee any major workflow changes in your library related to the implementation of the NDE?
I'm hoping not. Again, a lot of that will come out of what the most likely what the professor's class kind of relays to us. But as mentioned kind of at the beginning, I really like to kind of couch this conversation as primarily a design change for the NDE. A part of me, if I could put on like a tinfoil hat for a second, felt like actually versus parent company Clarivate was going all in with AI. They wanted all of their children companies to put in AI as well. And actually versus like, hey, you know who doesn't like AI? Librarians. So what if we instead bundled AI with a new Primo interface, which I'm sure many people have been asking for. So I can't imagine a lot of workflow changes impacting us, but again, sometimes you just got to roll with the punches as well.
All right. Well, that's all we have time for. Again, we'll forward you the rest of those questions. Thank you so much for your presentation, and for answering all those questions. This was really, really great. So, thanks again for being here with us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the rest of the day.
All right. And with that, we are going to move on to our next presentation. Let me just share my screen so I can introduce our next presenter. Bear with me one moment, please. Okay, our next session is running a documentation review and migration project, and this is going to be presented by